Hi, and welcome to another Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
What's your pin?
Today we're talking about achieving, and there's a mistake that almost everybody makes, and it's so simple, but most people don't even know they're making it. You ready?
What is it?
It is that most people, well, no, let me back up. Everybody has mad strengths to pull from, right? Okay. But the overwhelming majority of people are not familiar enough with their strengths so that they can intentionally pull from those strengths.
So what are you talking about with strengths?
Well, you've probably heard, if you've studied leadership at all, that being strength-based is really the way to get results, right? So it's not about figuring out where your weaknesses are and spending all your time and effort and energy trying to fix your weaknesses. It's really about knowing your strengths, finding that strength zone, but it's really about getting intentional about getting into the strength zone. And I came up with an analogy for this that may not be a perfect analogy for me because I'm not a golfer, but if any of you are golfers, you'll get it. And even if you're like me and you're just sort of a hacker, you'll also understand the concept. So you think about how a great golfer, let's say you've got a recreational golfer, but they're really an avid golfer. They've got this set of clubs, and every time they go out on the course, every shot that they go to hit, whether they're teeing off or whether they're partway down the fairway, they are not just grabbing any old club and swinging with it. They're actually very intentional, and they know what club to use. So there's a few different things. So I'm going to take this all the way through, right? There are a few different things you need to know about tapping into your strengths. Number one, you've got to be aware of what they are. And I can tell you that in working with all the executives that we work with, we use an assessment so that we can get crystal clear and just cut to the chase and find out immediately what their strengths are. Most everyone I work with is not in tune enough with the strengths that they have. They know some of them, the real obvious ones, but there are many, many strengths that we can be pulling from.
Give me an example of a strength. So when you're working with an executive, what is a strength that a lot of executives have?
It really is different. It's different for everybody, but
okay. Well, give me
depending on your behavioral style, as an example, there are different strengths that everybody pulls from different aspects of their style. So there are some people who are really strong at being assertive. They have the ability to go out and tackle things. They have the drive and the independence, the goal orientation to really go after something and succeed. Mm-hmm. They have tenacity. They have urgency. They have perseverance. Okay. That would be an example of one type of set of strengths, right? Okay. Now, what's really interesting, though, which we'll get to in a second, is that every one of these strengths, these list of strengths that I'm talking about, the burn is, there's always a burn, right? The burn is that there's always limitations that go along with these set of strengths. Okay. So let me just go back. I'm going to do it right now and connect it. The one who is driven and determined, the one who is success and goal oriented and independent, like the achievers, right? Well, they might tend to have some limitations included with that. Things like they may be impatient. Mm-hmm. They might possibly be too direct. And if not in control of their emotions, instead of it being assertive, they might actually get aggressive. So there are always things to be on the lookout for when you start to understand your strengths, is also understand what those potential limitations are that go hand in hand, because they always do. So let me give you another example. Okay. There are some people who are just incredible listeners, like the best of the best, right? And they're stable.
Like my mother.
Calm. Just like my mother-in-law. They're stable. They're laid back. They are patient as can be, like unbelievably patient with people. Nothing rattles their feathers. Like you'll never see them lose emotional control. Maybe not never, but you will almost never see them lose emotional control. So they're just that calm, cool, steady in the middle of a storm. Some of the challenges that these people might have, though, is they may not be able to confront things directly, especially if it looks like conflict. They might really shy away from conflict.
Right.
They might also be too slow to act. They may not actually take initiative. They're waiting for someone else to tell them what to do instead of for them to go out and take initiative. So again, with every single strength, there's this other side of it, which is the potential limitations. So when I talk about getting really familiar with your strengths, first of all is the awareness. I have to be aware of the different strengths I have.
Got it.
The second thing is, though, I've really got to start to study them. And this is where most people stop. They stop at awareness and they don't ever get to the studying part. But think about this. Think about, the different skill sets that you've acquired in your lifetime and how much time, effort, and energy you've spent studying. Think about taking a foreign language. I think most of us have taken at least some level of a foreign language in our past. And you think about how many hours, how many days, how many months, how many semesters, how many years you've taken that foreign language. It's one thing to begin to understand it, but it's the second thing to actually get deep and to start really engaging. It's all about repetition, right? And you have to keep learning and learning and learning. And what happens, right, with a foreign language, if you don't practice it,
you lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you totally lose it. But the difference here, I think, and this is where I think that, in my opinion, that our strengths and weaknesses are a little bit different from speaking a different language, because you can practice a different language, but we have this innately in us. So we are designed one particular way, and it's a strength for us. But we really do need, and I think what's important in what you said is, we really do need to recognize where the weakness is, because we all love to plow through on our strengths because that's what gets us to the places where we are, mainly when dealing with people. But what we don't hear a lot of times is what people won't tell you. They won't tell you that maybe you're using your strength too much in a relationship with somebody. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you're that outgoing, really decisive person, for most people that's okay, but for other people, you're kind of steamrolling them. And they're not going to say anything because maybe they're kind of the opposite of you. And they're not going to say it until maybe they get a lot wrong with other people, and they'll say, well, that Heather is pretty overwhelming. She's steamroller,
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times you're not going to know that about yourself because people aren't going to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens for everything, for every type
Across
of style that's out there. I think, even for myself, I know that I'm more passive, and I'm, and maybe I don't make decisions quite as fast, and I talk a little bit slower and all that. And for somebody who's that very decisive, very fast moving, I'm kind of annoying, but they're not going to tell me that. They're just going to. So understanding that we have these strengths, which are really great and have got us where we are, we have to be aware of what that strength can be and how it could be a weakness for us as well.
Yes, right? Yes. And I think what you've always heard
in my very slow and conscientious way of saying something, it takes 5 minutes for me to get out, and you're like, oh, come on, please, come on, just say it. Would you just say it?
Let's go. So you're right. Anytime you have a strength, if it goes unchecked and it's overused, it becomes a weakness most oftentimes. So that we've all heard that, right? But I think when you think about strengths, it's one thing. The strengths have gotten you where you are today, right? All of us, wherever we are today, is because of how much we've been able to tap into those strengths, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Or said another way, how many of these limitations we've gotten over, how many obstacles we've gotten past so that we can stay in our strength zone. That's what's gotten us where we are today. But the reality is so many people are missing out on their potential because they're not as in tune with their strengths as they could be, and they're not using them intentionally. So let's go back to this golfing example. If you have all these clubs and these clubs do different things, your strengths do different things for you, right? Mm-hmm. Every single situation is dynamic, just the same way every golf course is dynamic. If you're out on the golf course, depending on where you land, you're going to use a different club. Depending on the distance you are, you're going to use a different club. You're even going to swing it a different way. You're going to use a different speed. People, I think, spend way more time studying skill sets, right? Studying the technical, the hard skills versus really studying, okay, what is this strength of mine and how can I tap into it even further? Where can I use it? So let me give you an example. Actually, every time I do a debrief with an executive of one of our assessments that we use, one of the things we do is we go through the assessment, and when I show them their strength zones, most people will blow by those and look for the check marks that are in the potential areas for growth. They'll blow by all the green check marks and they'll go to the yellow or the blue saying, what do I need to fix? Because a lot of top performers are wired to be critical, wired to focus more on what needs to be fixed. How do I get better?
We've been trained that way. I mean, ever since we've been little kids in school from kindergarten, once you start taking exams, they start giving you check marks and telling you what you've done wrong. And that's the focus area. It's never about the good. I mean, yes, they say, oh, you got a 93%, but you look at the 5 different wrong answers that you've given, and they want you to work on those.
Yeah.
So we've been trained
we have
as
totally
kids
been trained
to look at that. So you can't really blame it on. You can't blame it on us.
I'm not blaming, but think about this. Think about the impact of this. If you have, let's say that 90% of your report shows these incredible strengths, and yet these strengths you're not totally in tune with. You don't really understand them. And more importantly, you're only using them when you bump into them subconsciously. You're not ever thinking intentionally, okay, where's my list of strengths? Like a menu. Which one should I pull out because I've got a problem or a challenge or an opportunity in front of me that's really, really important? Most people will never do that. They'll never actually go through and think about the strengths and which one should I pull? Which one should I pull where, right? Instead, they just do it subconsciously. 95% of the time, we are in an unconscious state. We are moving out of our subconscious mind. We're not consciously thinking, right? 95% of the time, we're habitual beings, which means you're not thinking about what strengths to use. You're just using whatever you have. And that has gotten you as far as you are today. But if you're talking about really tapping into next level performance, it's about not only being aware of your strengths, but understanding them much further and getting to the point where you can choose them like a tool. Like imagine a master craftsman and he's got his toolbox. You know, for me, that toolbox is filled with a bunch of metal and I don't really know how to use it. For a master craftsman, they could build just about anything with that same set of tools because they've studied it, because they've learned it, because they know what to use, when to use, how to use. Does that make sense? Yeah. Maybe that's better than the golf example. Yeah. I guess you could use it with anything. Cooking. You open up a drawer and you've got all these utensils to cook with. You and I would have no idea what to do with those things other than like fry an egg. Yeah. And there are people who can make masterpieces. And that's why we went to Cooper's Hawk for Easter. That's right. Because they do a much better job cooking and the food is fantastic. Than we do. Well, let's wrap this up. I think we've made our point. I think the idea of using your strengths, not overusing your strengths, being aware of the situation that you're in, the people that you're with. If you see that somebody's a little bit more withdrawn and more introverted, doesn't mean you need to be more over the top, and vice versa. So if you're more introverted and you see somebody that's really outgoing, it may be that you need to bring it up a little bit too. So be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your environment, be aware of who you're with, especially when you're looking to influence, when you're looking to make friends or whatever. You know, not everybody's the same. We are different in ways. So for next time, please join us again for another Evolve to Win show. Anything else, Heather? No, yeah, of course. I'll just wrap it up. Okay. Be aware of your strengths. Get to know your strengths like you mean it. Like become masterful at understanding them so you know when to use them. And just keep repeating that process over and over again. And you'll take your performance to a completely different level. Cool. Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Awesome day.